Welcome to Logistics Pulse, your go-to podcast for the latest insights in trucking and supply chain innovation. Sponsored by Mothership, the leading technology platform connecting businesses with fast, reliable freight delivery solutions.
Welcome back, everyone, for another deep dive. We're going to be jumping into something pretty big today for all of you out there in the logistics world. President Trump's second term, and all the craziness going on with global trade right now.
Yeah.
We've got a whole bunch of articles here from FreightWaves and, some industry blogs, even some international stuff we dug up, just trying to, make sense of it all.
Well, and it's interesting now because, it's not just speculation anymore, We're actually seeing some of those campaign promises, turn into actions.
Okay.
And the logistics industry, well, it's kind of right in the middle of it all. And I think, especially when you look at tariffs.
Okay, so let's break this down a little. Tariffs, they're basically like taxes on imported goods, right?
Mm-hmm.
And governments, they use them to protect domestic industries or, sometimes just to generate revenue.
Mm-hmm.
But why are we, suddenly hearing so much about them now?
Well, because, Trump's talking about a pretty big escalation here. It's not just about the steel and aluminum tariffs we saw in his first term, right?
Right.
Now we're talking about maybe a 25% tariff on stuff coming from Canada and Mexico.
Oh, wow.
And that could hit as early as February 1st.
Really?
And then on top of that, there's talk of up to 60% on goods from China.
60? Wow, those are some big numbers. No wonder everyone's kind of freaking out a little bit. The Canadian and Mexican currencies, they're already taking a hit.
Yeah.
So, for logistics pros,
Yeah.
people actually out there, doing the work, what does all this actually mean? What do they need to be prepared for?
Volatility. It's going to be, just this level of uncertainty makes it really hard to plan, to forecast. Anybody who relies on imports or exports, especially, if you're working with tight margins already,
Right.
you got to start thinking about how to be more agile,
Right.
How fast can you adjust your supply chain if these tariffs actually happen?
That makes a lot of sense. But, is there a bigger picture here? Beyond just, reacting to all this tariff stuff, you know what I mean? I'm seeing a lot of talk about reshoring.
Yeah.
Is this finally the moment it takes off?
It's possible. The whole idea, right, is that if importing stuff gets hit with these huge tariffs, companies are going to start bringing their manufacturing back to the U.S.
Right.
And for logistics, that's where things get really interesting. Think about it. Shorter supply chains, more regional trucking, maybe even a resurgence of rail intermodal.
So instead of those huge ships from China, we might start seeing more factories, like in the Midwest, feeding regional hubs.
Yeah, that's one scenario.
Wow.
And think about the ripple effects, say tech companies facing these tariffs.
Right.
Start building assembly plants closer to their U.S. customers.
Right.
Suddenly you've got a whole new flow of freight within the country.
Yeah, that would completely change the game for logistics providers in those areas. That's a huge opportunity. But, on the other side of that, there's a lot of people who are skeptical too, right?
Oh, yeah.
Is this reshoring thing really feasible on a large scale? Or is this just hype?
Well, that's the big question, right?
Yeah.
There are a lot of factors to consider, labor costs, infrastructure,
Sure.
skilled workforce.
Right.
The U.S. would have to make itself a pretty attractive option to compete with those global supply chains that have been built up over, decades,
Yeah. Well, and speaking of infrastructure, let's not forget the other big thing that's, out there, Trump's infrastructure plan.
Yeah.
And, the reports I'm seeing, it could be even bigger than the 2021 bill.
Wow.
Faster delivery times, better roads, more efficient ports. Sounds pretty great, right?
Yeah, it has the potential to be a game changer, but we got to be cautious, because while the headlines are exciting, we don't have a lot of details yet, right?
Right.
Where will the money actually go?
Yeah.
Will it actually improve those key freight corridors like I-95 and I-80?
Yeah. Those are good questions.
These are the things logistics pros really need to be asking.
Right. So, don't get too excited just yet. And speaking of global uncertainties, let's talk about the ripple effects beyond the U.S., right? Trump's whole America First thing. How's that playing out internationally, and what does it mean for logistics?
Well, it's creating a lot of reactions. It's like a big global trade chess game,
Right.
The EU, for example, they're already making moves. They're getting ready for potential retaliation and looking for new trade partners so they don't have to rely on the U.S. as much.
Right. And they just struck a deal with Mexico, right?
Exactly.
To remove tariffs on European goods.
Yeah.
And they're going to get investments in return. It's almost like they're saying, okay, U.S., if you want to play tough, we'll find other ways to do business.
Exactly. And that's just one example. Countries all over the world are changing their strategies, forming new alliances, and just trying to, figure out what's going to happen next in this whole global trade game.
So it sounds like, there's a lot for logistics professionals to try and understand right now. So we've got tariffs that are causing all this disruption. We've got reshoring, which could be a big opportunity, but nobody's really sure.
Right.
And then the whole global trade landscape is just shifting in all these unpredictable ways.
Yeah.
What's the one thing our listeners should really be taking away from all this?
Don't wait till it's too late, This is the time to be proactive, not reactive.
Okay.
Think about your supply chains. Where are you vulnerable? Do you have backup options for sourcing? Can you change your routes or how you transport things if you need to?
Those are all really good points. We've got a lot more to talk about in this deep dive, but before we go on, I want to hear from you. Yeah, we've talked about a lot of the, the challenges, the potential problems out there, the tariffs, trade wars, and all those big questions about reshoring and infrastructure. But let's, shift gears a little bit here.
Okay.
How can logistics professionals, not just survive this, but really thrive,
Right.
come out on top?
Well, it's not, all doom and gloom.
Right.
Times of change, they often lead to innovation, right? Those who are prepared to adapt,
Right.
they can find, real opportunities even in all this uncertainty.
So where should logistics professionals, be putting their energy right now? What are like the key strategies for, making it in this new era of global trade?
Well, I think agility is, really important. Being
Yeah.
able to shift quickly
Right.
in response to, whatever's happening with trade policies, tariffs,
Right.
sourcing strategies, all that. That's going to be a big difference maker.
So ditch those like rigid long-term plans
Yeah.
and just be ready to, move quickly.
Exactly. You got to be able to adjust your supply chains, diversify your sourcing, and just optimize everything, really fast. Think of it like, building a logistics system that's more like a speedboat than
Okay.
a giant cargo ship.
Right.
You got to be nimble.
That makes sense. But how do you actually do that?
Right.
Especially for, bigger companies, they've got these complex networks.
Yeah.
Turning that ship around, it's not easy.
No, it's not. And that's where technology comes in, investing in the right tools,
Right.
the right platforms. That can really, change the game when it comes to managing all this volatility
Right.
and staying efficient.
So we're talking about like real-time tracking, predictive analytics, automated inventory management.
Exactly. That kind of stuff can give you, a real-time view of your whole supply chain.
Right.
You can anticipate problems and make, smarter decisions.
Yeah. Based on data, not just like your gut.
Exactly. Data-driven decisions.
Okay. So it sounds like tech, it's not just a nice to have anymore. It's like essential.
Right.
If you want to stay competitive.
Absolutely.
And I imagine, relationships are more important now too, right?
Oh, absolutely. collaboration, communication, more important than ever. Think about it. If you've got a key supplier and they get hit with a tariff,
Right.
you need to be able to find someone else like that day.
Right. You got to have those connections already lined up.
Exactly. You need those relationships already in place.
So, working closely with suppliers, with carriers, even with, competitors,
Sometimes, yeah.
to share information, coordinate strategies. It's almost like you're building this like logistics ecosystem that's, resilient
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
adaptable.
Exactly. And being proactive,
Yeah.
Don't wait for a crisis to hit before you start thinking about diversifying.
Yeah. Diversification. That seems to be like a recurring theme here.
It is. If you rely too much on one supplier
Right.
or just one trade route,
Right.
you're really vulnerable if something goes wrong.
Especially with, all the stuff going on between the U.S. and China.
Exactly.
Nobody knows what's going to happen there.
And it's not just about geography either.
Okay.
It's about diversifying your products, how you transport things, even your customers.
Right. Spread the risk, have multiple options.
Exactly. Multiple avenues for success.
Makes sense. Okay, so while you're adapting and diversifying, what about the bottom line? With fuel prices going up, the potential for inflation, I mean, how can logistics companies protect their profits?
Well, managing costs is going to be even more important now.
So fuel efficiency, route optimization, smart warehousing, all that stuff.
Exactly. And data analytics can really help you, find those areas where you can improve and cut costs.
So we've got agility, technology, collaboration, diversification, cost management, anything else, any other key strategies people should be thinking about?
Yeah, one that often gets overlooked, talent development.
Oh, interesting. So investing in your workforce.
Exactly.
Okay.
I mean, with all these changes happening, you need people who are skilled, adaptable, ready to handle whatever comes next.
So training, upskilling, creating a culture of, continuous learning.
Exactly. Your people are your most important asset, right? Yeah. Investing in them is crucial, especially now, I mean.
Yeah, when the skills you need are changing so fast.
Exactly.
Okay, so to recap, we've got agility, technology, collaboration, diversification, cost management, talent development. That's a lot to keep track of.
It is, but it's about, figuring out what's most important for your business.
Right.
And focusing on that. And remember, you don't have to do it all alone,
Right.
There are resources out there to help.
Yeah, like industry associations, consulting firms, even the government.
Exactly. So stay informed, stay connected, and be proactive.
Great advice. Now let's bring it back to the U.S. for a minute.
Okay.
With all this talk about reshoring, domestic logistics is probably going to see some big changes.
Oh, yeah.
What should we be watching for?
Well, it all comes down to understanding where the goods are flowing, If companies really do start bringing manufacturing back to the U.S., we're going to see a surge in demand for regional trucking, warehousing, last-mile delivery, all that.
Shorter supply chains, more localized distribution. It's a whole new game.
It is. And it's not just about how much stuff is moving.
Right.
It's about how fast and how efficiently it's transported.
Right, because consumers, they want faster deliveries, more options,
Right.
And they want to be able to track their stuff, see where it is.
Absolutely. It's not just about moving stuff from point A to point B anymore,
Right.
It's about creating a smooth and efficient experience for the customer.
That's what matters in the end.
That's the key. And in this new era of domestic logistics, those who can do that well, they're the ones who are going to succeed.
So we've talked about, the big picture of global trade, the specific things happening in domestic logistics.
Right.
What about the government? What can we expect from the Trump administration, in terms of policies and regulations that might impact the industry?
Well, the administration is clearly focused on, boosting U.S. manufacturing and reducing the trade deficit through tariffs, trade deals, things like that.
Right.
And those policies are definitely going to have, ripple effects throughout the logistics industry.
For example, those infrastructure investments Trump keeps talking about.
Right.
Could really change how efficiently things are transported.
Oh, yeah. Better roads, bridges, ports. That could mean faster deliveries, less traffic, lower transportation costs.
But like you said before, we're still waiting on the specifics.
Right, exactly. And then there's the regulations, which are probably going to change too.
Especially with some of those environmental regulations being rolled back.
Yeah, that's a big one. That could affect fuel costs, emission standards, long-term strategies for fleets.
So logistics professionals really need to stay on top of all this and be ready to adapt.
Absolutely. And it's not just about reacting to whatever the government does,
Okay.
It's about actually being involved in the process.
Right, like lobbying for good regulations, working with industry groups, making your voice heard.
Exactly. The logistics industry is a big part of the economy,
Right.
So it's important to be at the table when these decisions are being made.
Okay. So wrapping up part 2 of this deep dive, we've talked about a lot.
Yeah.
Strategies for dealing with global trade, opportunities and challenges in domestic logistics.
We've talked about agility, technology, collaboration, diversification, cost management, talent development.
And the role of the government.
Yeah.
And how important it is for the logistics industry to be involved in policy.
Right.
But before we move on to part 3, I want to go back to something you said earlier about building a more resilient and adaptable logistics ecosystem.
Okay.
That really stuck with me. Can you talk a little more about what that actually looks like? How do companies actually do that? Welcome back, everyone. This is the final part of our deep dive into the world of logistics as we enter President Trump's second term. We've talked about all the the immediate challenges and opportunities. But now I kind of want to zoom out a little bit.
Okay.
Look ahead a bit.
Yeah.
We've talked about tariffs, trade wars, how to deal with all that volatility. But beyond that, what are the big long-term trends that are going to shape the future of logistics?
Yeah.
The things that'll matter no matter who's in the White House.
Well, one that's already changing everything is automation.
Yeah.
I mean, we're talking warehouse robots, self-driving trucks, drones delivering packages.
Yeah, I've seen those videos of the warehouses where the robots are just zipping around, picking and packing stuff. It's pretty wild.
Yeah.
It's also kind of, a little scary.
I mean, yeah, it's easy to see why people are worried about jobs.
I mean, that's a big concern.
It is, and it's something we need to be thinking about, proactively.
Right.
But it's not just a simple case of robots taking over,
Okay.
It's more about humans and machines working together.
So not like humans versus machines.
Right. The way I see it, automation can handle those repetitive tasks.
Interesting.
Making sure everything runs smoothly.
Okay. And warehouse workers, maybe they move into roles that require more technical skills or customer interaction.
Exactly. So the jobs change. They don't just disappear.
Okay. So it sounds like, being able to learn new things to adapt, that's going to be even more important than ever before.
Absolutely. And that kind of leads into another big trend we got to talk about, artificial intelligence.
AI. Everyone's talking about it, but I still don't really understand what it means for logistics. I mean, I guess I'm picturing a supercomputer that can predict supply chain disruptions before they happen.
Well, you're not far off, actually.
Really?
I mean, AI is already being used to optimize routes,
Okay.
predict demand, manage inventory more efficiently. Imagine, you can see a shipment delay coming because of bad weather or a traffic jam.
Right.
And you can reroute your trucks in real time to avoid it.
Wow, that would be amazing.
It would. And as AI gets, more sophisticated,
Right.
it's going to have even more applications in logistics.
We're just getting started, basically.
Exactly. We're just scratching the surface.
Okay, so we've got automation and AI, changing how things work on the operational side.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's also, a time of a lot of uncertainty.
Yeah, for sure.
The companies that succeed, the people who succeed,
Right.
it's going to be those who embrace technology, adapt to change, and put the customer first.
Sounds like the stakes are pretty high.
They are. That's why it's so important for logistics professionals to stay informed, stay engaged, and never stop learning.
Yeah, because the future is being shaped right now.
It is. Every decision, every innovation, every shipment matters.
Well said. Well, that brings us to the end of our deep dive into the world of logistics in the era of President Trump's second term.